In a kingdom full of happiness and joy, the king and queen lived. They dreamed of only one thing, to have a child. When they had already lost all hope, their daughter was born. She was very sweet and beautiful. On this occasion, a great celebration was arranged, and many guests were invited to the palace, among whom were good sorceresses. They were given the warmest, most cordial welcome. But the king and queen made a big mistake. They forgot to invite another sorceress. She had not left her tower for many years, and everyone thought that she had died long ago. When the time came to give gifts to the princess, the fairies generously rewarded her with beauty, a kind heart, intelligence, a beautiful voice, the ability to dance and play various musical instruments. When the turn came to the last sorceress, an evil fairy, whom they forgot to invite to the holiday, unexpectedly entered the hall. Cutlery was immediately brought for her, but she felt that she was not received as respectfully as she should have. Pulling the goblet and plate away from her, she muttered a spell. The sorceress wished that on the day of her 16th birthday, the princess pricked her hand with a spindle, and from this she died. The queen wept bitterly at the wish of the evil sorceress, and the king ordered to seize the witch. But she had already disappeared with an ominous laugh. Fortunately, the last of the fairies has not yet had time to say her wish to the princess. She could not undo the spell, but promised that the girl would not die, but would only fall asleep deeply until she was awakened by the kiss of love. The king immediately ordered the destruction of all spindles in the kingdom. And then came the day of the princess's 16th birthday, the day that the evil fairy spoke about. The princess grew up to be a beautiful and kind girl. The king ordered 3 sorceresses to watch over her. Fairies guarded her like the apple of an eye. On this day, the king and queen locked the girl in a room to prevent a terrible event. But the princess did not want to be locked up. Suddenly, a door appeared in the wall of her room, which the girl had never seen. She heard strange sounds outside the door. Burning with curiosity, and not knowing what awaited her, the girl entered her. The door led into a dark room in which a woman was sitting with her back to the princess. She was spinning. The girl had never seen a spindle in her life. She became curious. The princess went to the spindle, touched it, pricked her finger and fell into a deep sleep. And that woman turned out to be an evil fairy who was very happy that her spell had come true. Now everyone called the princess Sleeping Beauty. Upon learning of the misfortune, the kind sorceress decided to put the king and queen and the whole kingdom to sleep until the girl awakens. Soon, such impenetrable thickets of trees and thorny bushes grew around the castle that no one could get through such a thicket. 100 years later, a handsome prince from another kingdom went hunting. Seeing from afar the towers of the abandoned castle, he remembered the old story about the Sleeping Beauty that his parents had told him. And the prince decided to get inside. He struggled to make his way through the impenetrable thickets of trees and thorny bushes. But in the end, the prince approached the gates of the abandoned castle. He walked around the entire castle, and looked into the throne room. There the prince saw the king and queen sleeping. Then, in one of the rooms, he noticed Sleeping Beauty. She was sleeping on a bed decorated with flowers. The prince went to the bed, looked at the beautiful princess, and felt love fill his heart. He could not restrain himself and kissed Sleeping Beauty. And at that moment, she opened her eyes and saw a handsome prince. The king and queen also woke up, as did the whole kingdom. They were overjoyed, and in honor of the bride and groom, the most beautiful wedding that the world has ever seen was arranged right there. Since then they have lived happily ever after.
Once upon a time, there was a little girl. Once her rich father married an evil stepmother. She settled in the house with her 2 daughters. Their faces were beautiful and white, but their hearts were evil and cruel. And then came a difficult time for the poor girl. From morning until late in the evening, they forced her to do dirty work, carry water, heat the stove, cook food, wash dishes, and do laundry. And besides, the half-sisters did their best to upset her as much as possible. They mocked her, poured peas and wheat into the ashes, and she had to sit and pick them out. In the evening, when she was tired of work, she had to go to bed not in bed, but on the floor, next to the stove. And because she was always in ash, dust, and dirty, the sisters called her Cinderella. But then it happened one day that the king started a feast, which was supposed to last for 3 whole days, and called all the beautiful girls of the country to the holiday so that his son could choose a bride for himself. When the 2 named sisters learned that they, too, could come to the feast, they instantly began to dress up and preen. Cinderella also wanted to go dancing, but her stepmother did not let her go, because she had no dress or shoes, and she was dirty. And then the evil stepmother poured a bowl of wheat into the ashes and said that if Cinderella collected it in 2 hours, then she could go with her sisters. Cinderella went out into the garden and cried. And then 2 white doves flew in, followed by a whole flock of different birds. They swooped down on the ash and began to peck, and so they chose all the grains in a bowl. In less than an hour, they finished their work, and everyone flew back. Cinderella brought a bowl to her stepmother, began to rejoice, thinking that she could go to the feast. But her stepmother would not let her in any way. She turned her back on Cinderella and hurried with her 2 daughters to the ball. When there was no one left at home, Cinderella sat down on the floor and cried with grief. And then 2 white doves flew in, followed by a whole flock of different birds, and they threw off their dress and shoes shiny and all in gold. She quickly put on this dress and came to the bride. They saw her stepsisters and stepmother and thought that it must be some strange princess, she was so beautiful in her golden dress. It never occurred to them that it was Cinderella. The prince came out to meet her, took her hand, and they began to dance. And he liked Cinderella so much that he did not want to dance with any other girl. She danced until the evening and wanted to return home, but the prince asked her to see her off. He wanted to know whose beautiful girl this is, and where she lives. But Cinderella ran away from him and climbed onto the dovecot. The prince ordered to destroy the dovecot, but there was no one in it. And nowhere near could he find his beautiful stranger. No one could have guessed that Cinderella was rescued by pigeons that took her home. The prince was upset and went to the palace with his head down. And suddenly he saw a shoe, lifted it up, it was so small and elegant and all of pure gold. The prince guessed that when Cinderella ran away from him, the shoe from her left foot remained on one of the steps. The prince was delighted and ordered to find the mistress of this shoe, and to whom it suits he will marry that one. The parents returned from the ball. They saw that Cinderella was asleep in her shirt on ash, and a dim light was on by the stove. Both sisters went to their rooms, hoping that tomorrow they would be lucky enough to put on the golden slipper. The next day, the prince came to their house, and said that everyone who wants to try on the shoe of his future wife should come out. 2 sisters came out, and the stepmother locked Cinderella in the house and did not let her out. The older sister tried it on a small shoe. The younger sister tried it on the shoe as great. The prince was about to leave, but Cinderella climbed out of the window and ran out to him. And she put on a shoe, and it just fit her. The prince looked into her eyes and recognized in her the very beautiful girl with whom he danced. He took Cinderella, put her on a horse and rode off to play a wedding with her. And he ordered the sisters and stepmother to be locked in their house, and never let them out of there. This is how they were punished for their malice and deceit.